Are you old enough to remember when the Chronic album dropped? My name's Scott, and I remember in '93 when Dre dropped the Chronic. This didn't just change hip-hop, but my whole neighborhood after that. Many people, including myself, feel the Chronic album actually helped bring the crack era to an end. The Chronic was recorded at Death Row Studios in Los Angeles in 1992, while the LA riots were happening outside. Many people who helped the production of the album were even looting themselves. Dr. Dre didn't participate in the looting, but several other people on the album did. The Chronic brought out many unknown names like Nate Dogg, Warren G, Daz, Corrupt, RBX, Jewel, The Lady of Rage, and the DOC. This unique sound was recorded with actual instruments in some cases, which is rare in rap today, and his synthesizer became instrumental to this sound. The studio was also stocked up on the highest grade Chronic provided by Snoop Dogg. The album made smoking weed seem cool, and songs like Little Ghetto Boy told the harsh realities of the streets and the street life growing up. This ripple effect was felt through hip-hop and on the streets, and made it uncool to use hard drugs, especially after watching the negative effects it had on the generation before us. Only dealing was cool, but using them was completely off limits, and you could get hurt or killed, because it makes you look weak and vulnerable to be on drugs. I broke this rule once when I was young, and almost lost my life learning this lesson. Zigzags became very popular back then, and still are to this day, and Snoop Dogg was literally sponsored by St. Ides, the malt liquor drink from back then. The Chronic album was released on December 15th that year by Death Row and Interscope Records. It was distributed by Priority Records and went certified triple platinum in sales. Up until this point, most rap artists looked down on smoking weed and lumped it with other harder drugs. Even Dr. Dre was against smoking in his lyrics before the Chronic album dropped. But all of that would change when a skinny 19-year-old rapper named Snoop Dogg came to the studio to record with the best Chronic in Los Angeles, and would even become the name of the album after that. Not only was gangster rap about to explode onto the mainstream scene, but the Chronic started replacing the crack culture that had taken over the streets, at a time when coke and crack dominated lower income neighborhoods like mine. This drug may have provided a party atmosphere in clubs or for partygoers who maintained themselves on the weekdays, but these drugs tore apart neighborhoods like mine, turned a lot of parents into addicts, created street gangs, and skyrocketed crime and violence. Kids growing up in this environment would never forget the damage these drugs caused, and set the stage for what I think is the greatest rap album ever made, The Chronic. Although I was only 10 years old in 1993, I was very influenced by rap music already, and listened to the local hip-hop station from Seattle, as well as watching MTV every day. They definitely weren't playing NWA or Fuck the Police or any other highly controversial songs yet in 1991 and 1992. This was a different time of rap music, when most rap songs sounded fun or were directed towards social change. The most gangster mainstream thing out was Naughty by Nature before this, who stood out from the rest of the hip-hop crowd wearing all black and rapping much harder lyrics. Their frontman Tretch would even wave around his machete and have kids like me talking. But until this point, hip-hop played on the radio and MTV was primarily from the East Coast where rap started, but it lacked that West Coast gangster flavor. Dr. Dre was able to usher in a new musical style and lyrics to hip-hop that changed all of that overnight. It sounded like something completely new, but also something familiar that everybody wanted to hear. The beats were slower and mellower because he was using them from late 1970s and early 1980s funk that he grew up on. This unique sound with samples of funk gave rise to what's known as G-Funk, and this West Coast sound would define the decade as gangster rap took over. By the next year, in '94, I watched Snoop Dogg being pushed out on stage at the MTV Music Awards in a wheelchair, wearing a blue flannel, Dickies, and Chuck Taylors.
Back on my feet, and everything that brother said came to reality. I'm living like a bowl of loke, I'm having money and blowing hella bearish smoke. I bought my mama a beast, my boo-boo a Jag, and now I'm rolling in a 9-Triz L Dog Ray. Just remember who changed your mind.
Shortly after his performance, he turned himself in for the fight of his life. We are going to take a quick break for Harvest Helper. Want to be your own boss? Pick up a trimmer from Bailey Sweet at Harvest Helper and rent it out. If you're around cannabis farms, you can make 6 figures a year in the right location, working from home and delivering trimmers. So give her a call today. The Chronic's album cover paid homage to Zigzag Rolling Papers. Snoop Dogg, who had a significant role on the album, was praised for his lyrics and flow, and it was stated, coupled with his inventive rhymes, Snoop's distinctive style made him a superstar before he'd even released a recording of his own, and that his involvement was as important to the album's success as its production. Growing up poor and often surrounded by violence, Snoop Dogg joined the Crips as a teenager before serving 6 months in the Wayside County Jail outside of Los Angeles. Murder Was the Case was a song from a 1994 soundtrack album and short film of the same name. The music video and film are about Snoop Dogg's fictional death and resurrection after making a deal with the devil. The video starred Snoop Dogg as well as Charlie Murphy, Eddie Murphy's brother, and came out simultaneously while Snoop Dogg was on trial facing life in prison. But it actually helped Death Row's image at the time to sell more records and cement their reputation in the music industry. In 1998, after his departure from Death Row, Snoop Dogg hooked up with rapper and producer Master P, who changed the game and made a huge impact that wrote the blueprint for independent rap labels to follow. From New Orleans, his realness and rhymes were something that created a whole new sound, and No Limit Records was on fire back then. When these two hooked up, another one of rap's greatest albums was made. The Game Is to Be Sold Not Told was an instant classic like Doggy Style. Tracks like Slow Down and Still a G Thing detailed his life on the streets before rapping and showcased just how talented and relevant Snoop Dogg still was, even without Death Row Records and Dr. Dre producing him. I can still play that album almost all the way through, just like Doggy Style and The Chronic. Almost every song hits and brings me all the way back to that time in my living room in 1993 when I watched Ain't Nothing But a G Thing for the first time. In the end, Death Row and Dr. Dre would end up breaking ties with each other in 1996 when he left to start his own label, Aftermath Entertainment, which was played out in the movie Straight Outta Compton. After his breakup with Suge Knight and Death Row, Dr. Dre went on to produce several more artists under his own record label Aftermath, and his impact on rap music has been monumental. Most of his artists have been pioneers in rap music themselves as well. This list includes Eminem, Kendrick Lamar, 50 Cent, and The Game. So you can say Dr. Dre still has a huge impact on rap to this day. Even playing in the Super Bowl with Snoop Dogg just a couple years ago for a little reunion. None of this would have been possible though if it weren't for one album that made rap music what it is today. But what do you think? Let us know in the comments below, and have a smoking day.